Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Santa Cruz County Genealogical Society's program for today. We're going to go straight to Gail Burke.
Good afternoon. We are glad to see all of you here for today's program. This program is presented in partnership with the Santa Cruz Public Libraries on the library's Zoom meetings platform. We thank our library partners, Sarah Jones, Victor Willis, and Jessica Goodman for their assistance in supporting our programs. The Society's DNA Special Interest Group held its monthly session earlier today. We will meet next on Tuesday, December 6th at 10 a.m. at the downtown meeting room of the downtown library. We will meet upstairs and look for reminder notices about the time and place for the next session. All the handouts from the DNA Special Interest Group can be accessed by way of the Genealogical Society webpage under the category Lecture Recordings and Handouts. Just a reminder, the upstairs meeting room in the library is reserved for the Genealogical Society for all our Tuesday meetings, including the Zoom meetings. The Society displays the Zoom presentations on the large monitor, and members are available after the programs to answer any questions that attendees might have. It's a fun way to participate in the Zoom programs in person. For details, contact Mike Epperson or join us at 1 p.m. in the library meeting room. In a moment, I will introduce today's speaker. First, though, we have just a few announcements. If you have not yet signed up to be a volunteer staffer, please join us. We staff the genealogical room at the downtown library Monday through Sunday. Each shift is only 2.5 hours long, and it's an opportunity to become more familiar with our reference collection. Our staffing roster will be complete if each of you will help by staffing just 1 day per month. Please volunteer to staff by emailing the Society, and I will put the Society email address in the chat a little later today. We're always eager to receive articles of genealogical interest for our newsletter. The next quarterly edition will be the January, February, March 2023 issue. Send articles about your genealogical endeavors, successes, and research tips to our editor, Lisa Robinson. We also hope to feature your genealogical brick walls in upcoming newsletters, so tell us where you're stymied. As members know, we do not present a program in December. In place of our monthly program, we will enjoy a holiday luncheon at the Crow's Nest on Thursday, December 1 at 11:30 a.m. The cost for the luncheon is $40 and includes entree salad, non-alcoholic beverage, tax, and tip. Members and guests are welcome. Please make your reservation and prepayment to Mike Epperson by Monday, November 21. Come see how much fun we genealogists can have. And don't forget to bring warm socks or canned food for donation to the St. Francis Soup Kitchen. In January 2023, I will again lead a genealogical writing program. Please join us on the first Tuesday of January, that's January 3rd at 1 p.m. for this annual genealogical program. We will write about our ancestors' journeys, and this will be a Zoom program. Now, let's get to today's speaker. We are delighted to welcome Daniel Modell, who will present the history of Ebert's, a family business. For over 80 years, the Ebert family business at the corner of Soquel and Seabright Avenues was a cornerstone of the Eastside Santa Cruz community. While the business has faded into history, Ebert's continues to hold a special place in the hearts and minds of many Santa Cruzans. Mr. Modell's presentation will bring the Ebert story to life through a documentary film he created with the help of the Ebert and Eddy families. The film documents the story of Ebert's and the Ebert family through firsthand accounts and previously unreleased family photos and home movies. There was no handout for today's program. The program, including the documentary film, however, is being recorded and will be available on the Santa Cruz Library's YouTube channel shortly, so you will be able to review the presentation. Mr. Modell is an Eastside Santa Cruz resident with a passion for preserving and promoting local history. He conducts historical walking tours and assists in the creation of historical markers. His undertaking, the Eastside Oral History Project, has been a conduit for many local residents to preserve their families' histories. Through his scholarship, Daniel helps local residents better understand and appreciate the history of Eastside Santa Cruz. We are honored to have Daniel Modell with us today. Please join me in giving Mr. Modell a warm Zoom welcome.
Thank you, Gail. For those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in preserving and promoting Eastside history for a good number of years. I feel very strongly we all appreciate where we live that much more when we understand the history. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I do want to explain a little bit how I got onto the Ebert's project. Around the time the pandemic started, I had been working on a project on the flood of '55. While the pandemic put the kibosh on having any sort of in-person event, I created a documentary film on it, which coincidentally is also available on YouTube. But once I finished that project, I was looking for a new direction to go in. And it was around that time that the Genealogical Society's Annette Hagopian was doing a presentation on her home, which it turns out was owned at one time by one of the Ebert family. After her presentation, I spoke to her, let her know I knew a decent amount about the Eberts and was friendly with their family. And she suggested I should do a presentation on the history of family and of the store. That's kind of what launched me on this expedition. A few other minor things before we start. As Gail mentioned, I refer to a lot of my work as the Eastside Oral History Project. This is to note the extensive number of oral histories that I've conducted here on the East Side over the years. While only a small portion of my documentary is direct oral histories from the Ebert family, a lot of the content was taken from detailed in-person interviews that I conducted with them. Few other minor things. One, there are lots of video and audio clips that are all incorporated into this documentary, and I want to make sure everyone is aware the sound might change slightly from one video clip to the next. It moves pretty seamless, but there might be some times where you want to turn the audio up just slightly or turn it down slightly. So you might want to just keep that in mind as we move forward. The other thing, the entire video is going to run about 50 minutes. The last 10 minutes are going to be what I refer to in the video as bonus features. This includes about 10 minutes of video of Ebert family home movies of the remodel on their building in 1940. It might run a little long for some, but it's a very special film. Shows the area at a time that looks very different than it does today. And I really want to make sure everybody gets to see that. So that's the reason why I decided to include all that. And lastly, my email address for anybody who would like to discuss things further after our presentation and the Q&A is eastsidehistory@gmail.com. Love to hear from you. Always interested in learning more about the Eberts. So without further ado, let's get to the documentary. My name is Dan Modell. Welcome to the corner of Soquel and Seabright Avenues here in the heart of Santa Cruz's East Side. I think most people would agree this has to be one of the most recognizable intersections of the area, not just for the Rio Theater with its iconic ticket booth, but also for the building across the street with its distinctive clock tower. Today, this building houses a variety of businesses, including Lillian's Italian Kitchen, one of the most popular restaurants in town. But this building also has a special history. For many years, this was the site of Ebert's department store and supermarket, known to most residents simply as Ebert's. The business was founded way back in 1915 by T.R. Ebert and his brother Otto. TR, his children, and indeed his children's children would run the business for over 80 years. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some stories that explain what made Ebert so special. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome you to come inside as we discover the history of Ebert's. Theodore Richard Ebert, or TR as he was better known, was born in 1874 in Berlin, Wisconsin. He was one of 13 children born to William and Amelia Ebert, both immigrants from Germany. TR grew up on the family farm. In 1894, William sold the farm and moved his family to Merrill, Wisconsin, where he opened a general merchandise store. TR worked in the store, learning the family business. Over the years, he also worked as a farmer, a logger, and even taught school for a time. However, TR eventually returned to work at his family's store, which he would go on to head. In 1899, TR married Augusta Niemann. Together they had 3 sons, Clarence, Alvin, and Laverne, and a daughter, Dorothy. You might have thought our story would end here. TR had a beautiful family and a thriving business. But this, as they say, was only the beginning. I can't offer you a definitive answer as to why TR and Augusta came to Santa Cruz. Maybe it was to escape the Wisconsin winters, or perhaps it was the allure of the California dream. Maybe their decision was driven by the presence of family in the Santa Cruz area. Prior to TR's arrival in Santa Cruz, some of his siblings had already relocated to the Santa Cruz area and started businesses. In 1910, his brother C.J. Ebert opened a men's clothing store on Pacific Avenue called The Wardrobe. Another Ebert, O.W., aka Otto, had a grocery on Soquel Avenue between Cayuga and Pine Streets. Yet another Ebert, Henry, lived on the east side and worked as a carpenter. The patriarch of the family, William Ebert, arrived in Santa Cruz in 1913, and he and Amelia made their home here on the east side on Pine Street. A year later, in 1914, TR and Augusta arrived. That same year, TR's father purchased a plot of land on the corner of Soquel and Seabright Avenues. This property, purchased for a mere $5, was the beginning of what would eventually become Ebert's. The land was somewhat nondescript. Some accounts describe it as a hayfield, others a cow pasture. Supposedly the property was surrounded by a picket fence and had a well in the center. Not exactly prime real estate. If that wasn't bad enough, it was only a few years earlier in 1905 that the east side had been annexed by the city of Santa Cruz, and much of the land surrounding the Eberts' property was still undeveloped. Where would their customers come from? Despite such questions, the Eberts constructed a 50 by 100 foot concrete building on the site, and on June 14, 1915, TR and Otto Ebert opened Ebert Mercantile. I should mention that one of the Eberts' neighbors, Joe Strobing, became their first employee. I can't tell you much about Mr. Strobing or his job at Ebert Mercantile, but I can tell you that, according to the Strobing family, TR and Otto paid their first employee in gold. In short order, the location of Ebert Mercantile became the subject of some ridicule. Local residents called TR and Otto foolish for attempting to start a business on the east side of Santa Cruz out in the country. The mayor of Santa Cruz himself, T.W. Drullard, suggested that Ebert Mercantile would quickly go broke. Despite such dire predictions, with TR manning the sale of dry goods and Otto handling groceries, their business flourished. They had made an initial investment of $1,200 in merchandise. By the end of 1915, Ebert's had done $6,420 of business, a more than 400% profit.
They even started constructing a new structure next to their main building, which would become their first feed store. Ebert's was off and running. Approximately 1 year later, TR bought Otto out of his stake in Ebert Mercantile. This is important for two reasons. First, it led to a name change, with Ebert Mercantile becoming known as Theo R. Ebert. Second, Otto now focused his energy on his own grocery in downtown Santa Cruz. This is important as Otto and other members of the Ebert family had opened a variety of businesses in the Santa Cruz area using the Ebert name. Not just OW's grocery downtown, but also CJ Ebert's clothing store on Pacific Avenue and Ray Ebert's wholesale candy store. This confused many, from customers to postmen. As a result, TR needed some way to differentiate his store from other Ebert family businesses. Toward that end, in 1920, newspapers reported Theo R. Ebert going under a new name, the Quality Store. And a store selling quality produce required a quality trademark, something that would let customers know that their products were of the utmost quality, sincerity, and value. It turned out that TR's son Alvin had a creative flair. While in high school, Alvin created a character of a little man wearing a huge hat and glasses. When TR saw it, he knew he had found his trademark. The character would become known as Dependable Dan. The little man with the big hat would go on for many years to be found in advertisements for the Quality Store, as well as on their products, from chicken feed to bread to their signature Kona coffee. I should point out that while local newspapers attributed the creation of Dependable Dan to Alvin Ebert, family members suggest that it may have instead been his brother Clarence, who was known to most as Bab, who created the character. While I leave it to others to determine a definitive answer, it's important to me that Bab gets some of the credit for creating Dependable Dan. But back to our story. I should also mention that in 1917, TR, with the help of his brother Henry and his brother-in-law Robert Zamzow, built a new home for TR's family just a block away from the Quality Store, at the corner of Seabright Avenue and Hanover Street. One can only assume TR chose this location to make it easier for him to go back and forth to work. TR and Augusta's granddaughter and her family live in the home today. TR taught his children the importance of the entrepreneurial spirit from an early age. Alvin's earliest job in the store was catching mice. His father offered to pay him 5 cents for every mouse he caught. Alvin caught 20 mice in the first week, earning a whole $1 and startling his father, who pinched every penny. Laverne would go by the nickname Bunny for most of his life as a result of a childhood spent taking rabbits in his little red wagon to be sold down at the community market on Front Street. Needless to say, the Ebert children grew up knowing the value of a hard day's work. Each of TR's boys would go on to play a major role in the family business. Bab went to the Kessler School in Chicago, where he studied show card writing, window trimming, and advertising. He would go on to create much of Ebert's advertising as well as managing dry goods. Alvin went to the California College of Arts and Crafts in Oakland and went on to manage the grocery department. Bunny also played an important role managing produce. From the moment Ebert Mercantile opened its doors, accompanied by a performance of the Santa Cruz Orchestra, it was apparent that a big part of Ebert's promotional plan involved finding new and different ways to get customers to come through their doors. In the early days of Ebert's, they were credited with being one of the first businesses in the Santa Cruz area to split the nickel and give change in pennies. Many customers were so used to conducting business in increments no smaller than a nickel, when they got their change in pennies, they didn't know what to do with them. Some would simply leave their pennies on the counter. Customers soon came to realize that when buying items that weren't priced in denominations of 5 cents, say buying a yard of cloth for 9 cents rather than 10, their money went further. Eventually, other local businesses provided similar pricing, but being one of the first businesses in Santa Cruz to split the nickel helped grow the Ebert's brand and gave them a strong positive reputation in the local community. In another effort to bring in customers, Ebert's frequently turned shopping into a festive affair. Ebert's would hold numerous promotional events throughout the year, from celebrating the anniversary of the store's opening to holding sales to honor the birthday of the city of Santa Cruz. They also celebrated the opening of new departments in their store. In 1928, Ebert's opened their Spanish Market. To honor the occasion, employees dressed up in costume from a time when gay señoritas and bold caballeros were the rule and not the exception in California. The opening of the Spanish Market was also when the Quality Store opened its first soda fountain, Spanish-themed, of course. There was also the Ebert's Follies, which ran in conjunction with their anniversary sale. The Follies event first occurred in the 1930s and ran again in 1955 during Ebert's 40th anniversary sale. Staff would dress in costume, from chefs to clowns. Some years they would cross-dress or dress in different themes, including the gay 90s, 1890s that is. There was often music, and one year as part of the festivities, Ebert's even promised cartoons while you wait, drawn by Ferg, the Sperry Flower Company cartoonist. T.R. Ebert also recognized early on that the fate of his business not only rested in his hands, but in the success of other Eastside businesses. With that in mind, in 1923, he helped found the East Santa Cruz Businessmen's Association. His civic spirit was further evident in T.R. and his children's participation in the Exchange Club, a local service organization. But the secret of Ebert's success wasn't just showmanship and community spirit. It was about meeting the changing needs of their customers. Nowhere is this more visible than in the store's many departments and services. For example, for many years the Quality Store had its own on-site grain mill. This allowed them to make their own flour, which they used in their dependable Dan's bread. It also allowed them to provide local poultry farmers with laying mash, growing mash, and scratch. Looking at the east side of Santa Cruz today, you might not believe it, but this area was once the site of a booming poultry industry dating back to before Ebert's first opened their doors and continuing well into the 1930s. There was money to be made, and by having their own mill and corresponding feed department, Ebert's was capitalizing on it. I want to take a moment and share with you some photos of Ebert's shop windows from this period. The first shows a rooster surrounded by poultry products, including Dr. Hess's Poultry Panacea, as well as Globe A1 chicken feed. Of particular interest is the sign around the rooster's neck stating, "I can't go to sleep until I've had some of that quality feed." What I found particularly catchy was the rooster in the other window, whose sign read, "Who wants to sleep anyhow? That rooster in the other window is off his perch. Quality feed gives us so much pep, we don't want to sleep. It's so good, it keeps us up all night." I can only imagine such displays were real eye-catchers. And doing business with local poultry farmers didn't just mean selling feed. It also meant buying eggs, which Ebert's sold in their egg department. At one point, Ebert's purchased as many as 150 cases of eggs a day, some of which were sold to customers as far away as San Francisco. But selling eggs wasn't that simple. Every egg had to be candled, viewed with a small but powerful light in an otherwise dark room to determine if the egg was fertilized. TR built a candling room in his store specifically for this purpose.
And that was where poor old Grandpa spent a lot of his time back there in the little dark egg room. And he would candle the eggs.
And every egg that went through that store was candled and put in the carton and put on the shelf for years and years. I remember when the candler would go on vacation, and I'd go in the back room and I'd do the candling. And that was a lot of fun for a while too. You take 4 at a time and 2 in each hand, and anything with a blood spot, that'd come home and Mom would cook with those.
Ebert's continued to do on-site candling well into the 1960s. But with the decline of the chicken business and the increasing residential development on the east side, the feed store's days were numbered. It eventually transformed into Ebert's Garden Store. Aided by the construction of a new garden store building in 1964, as well as Al Ebert's passion for gardening, he worked there 20 years, the garden store would last well into the 1980s. Actually, there were many departments over the years: feed and fuel, grocery, meat, dry goods, produce, a pharmacy, a barber shop, a restaurant, and don't forget the soda fountain. In an effort to stay modern, Ebert's remodeled and reorganized their departments every few years. One example of this was the opening of their warehouse market in August of 1935. At that time, the grocery and produce departments were moved next door to a separate facility run by Al Ebert. While the shops only remained separate for 5 years, the change was important as it allowed for the expansion of the dry goods department, giving it the entire corner building where Lillian's restaurant is located today. I want to take a moment and share with you some Ebert family home movies of one of the more unusual promotions at the warehouse market, the appearance of the Folger Racing Pigeons. Whether it be guessing how long it would take for the pigeons to fly to their roost in Santa Barbara, or the offer to send a free pigeongram anywhere in the U.S., this was a very special event and got the warehouse market a good deal of attention. Another remodel in 1940 was particularly extensive and important. A year earlier, TR and his family went up to San Francisco to attend the Golden Gate International Exposition, known to many as the World's Fair. While there, TR got his first glimpse of Art Deco architecture. This was the inspiration for the style of the building's 1940 remodel, indeed, the very style we see today. And as one would expect from T.R. Ebert, in 1940 he opened his newly remodeled store with great fanfare. Performers included Charlie Marshall and his Texas Singers and Mona Greer, the Texas Cowgirl. It was also noteworthy that by this time, the other Ebert family businesses in the Santa Cruz area had come and gone. Since there was no longer any competition for the Ebert's name on his business, TR decided to change the name of his store to the moniker many longtime residents still remember, Ebert's Department Store and Supermarket. Here's a little more Ebert's family home movies for your enjoyment. Footage of the 1940 remodel accompanied by the music of Charlie Marshall himself.
Say part of your side of the schooner, long side of the Santa Fe Trail. They made it here Monday or sooner had a water keg tied on the tail. There was Daddy and Ma on a mule seat, and somewhere along by the way was a tow-headed gal on a fiddle, just a jangling for old Santa Fe. Yo-ho, 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 just a jangling for old Santa Fe. Yo-ho, 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 just a jangling for old Santa Fe. I seen her ride down the Arroyo, way back on the Arkansas sands. She had smiles like an acre of sunflowers, and a quirt in her little brown hand. She mounted her pillow so airy, she rode like she carried the mail, and her eyes there set fire to the prairie, alongside of the Santa Fe Trail. Yo-ho, 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 just alongside the old Santa Fe. Yo-ho, 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 just alongside the old Santa Fe. I know a gal down on the border that I'd ride to El Paso to sigh. I'm acquainted with high-flying orders, and I sometimes kiss some gals goodnight. But Lord, they're all fluffles and beaten, and drink fancy tea by the pail. I ain't used to that sort of stampeding alongside of the Santa Fe Trail. Yo-ho, yo-ho, yo-ho.
The 1940 remodel was also when the building's distinctive tower was built. However, you might notice that something is missing. Initially, the tower was built without its signature clock. It wasn't until 1945 that the electric telechron clock was installed. The clock's face was all neon, in red, white, and blue colors, with 6-inch numerals and a 4-foot diameter dial. It was illuminated from dusk to dawn. The clock tower became somewhat of an icon for the east side of Santa Cruz and is a site local residents still enjoy today. You might have realized, while we've given plenty of attention to TR's 3 sons, I've yet to share with you the story of TR's daughter, Dorothy. Dorothy went to Heald Business College and, rather than spending her career working at Ebert's as her brothers did, she struck off on her own and had a fine career working at the Santa Cruz Savings and Loan. Dorothy also showed her community spirit, being elected president of the local PTA as well as president of the women's division of the Exchange Club, the Exchangettes. It's worth noting that in her later years, Dorothy would work for the family, handling the bookkeeping for the property management of the other businesses that leased the Eberts building. Dorothy also made a contribution through marrying a man who had become an important part of the Eberts family, J. Howard Eddy. Howard was born and raised in Stockton, California, and worked as a salesman for Armour Meats. Dorothy and Howard first met at a dance at the Coconut Grove. They married in 1937, and Howard joined the Eberts team in 1943. Given his background, it was appropriate that he would manage the meat department, as well as eventually becoming a part owner of the store. Also in 1937, TR, now 63 years old, decided that it was time to retire. He would remain active behind the scenes at Ebert's, but TR left the store's day-to-day operations to his sons and new son-in-law. Then, in 1947, Bab Ebert died unexpectedly. Bab's son Bob took over much of his father's advertising responsibilities. Bob Ebert would become one of many of the third generation of Eberts to work at the store. This included Diane and Susan Ebert in women's apparel, Howard A. Eddy in the garden store, and Dick Eddy in bulk goods. In addition, I should also point out that Diane's husband, Ken Cronick, worked at Ebert's for over 30 years, managing men's and women's apparel. He was an amazing salesman. As Diane puts it, he could sell ice to an Eskimo. Indeed, Ebert's remained a family-run business in the truest sense of the word. Despite these changes, Ebert's continued to be a force locally and found new ways to show their commitment to the Santa Cruz community. During World War II, the store supported the war effort by collecting old silk and nylon hosiery to be made into parachutes, as well as powder bags for explosives. As one would expect, Ebert's did a bang-up job, bringing in 2,520 pairs of stockings, totaling 168 pounds of material. Ebert's continued to chug along into the 1950s, and it's from this period we will talk about another secret of Ebert's success: customer service.
I remember going to work in the garden store, and my Uncle Al told me, if a customer comes in, try to learn their name, and when they come in a second time, you always ask them, when that person walks in the door, good morning, how can I help you? Can I show you anything? It's always customer service, customer service, customer service. And it was the same thing in the grocery store. They knew everybody. It was always like, oh, Dan, nice to see you. Glad to see you're shopping today. How are you doing? What's going on?
Here's another great example of Ebert's customer service going above and beyond.
A customer had asked about an item that was out of stock, and so the person, they went to somebody, and that person decided to go to the back to see if they had it, and they didn't, so they confronted somebody that was higher up in the Ebert family, I guess, and somebody went to Shopper's Corner, bought it off the shelf, and brought it back to give it to the customer.
Ebert's wasn't just selling products, it was selling a relationship, and Santa Cruz residents loved it. And it wasn't just the customers who loved Ebert's. Their staff loved working there too. Actually, many Ebert's staff devoted their entire working lives to Ebert's. Maybe it was their lavish store picnics. Maybe it was the free turkeys on Thanksgiving. I think it was because Ebert's treated their employees with fairness and respect, and the employees recognized they were part of something special. Some of the longtime employees included Bill Watts, 30 years, Alice Kirshner, 46 years, and James Schofield, 21 years, just to name a few. But the list goes on, all of them important members of the Ebert's family. The 1960s saw increasing competition in the local grocery business from both Safeway and Lucky stores. In 1967, the decision was made to close Ebert's grocery department. Obviously, a sad day. However, channeling TR's entrepreneurial spirit, the decision was made to lease the space to an outside business. Bob Hart had been working as a fabric mill representative, selling fabric to a nearby store, Rio Yardage. He purchased the business and quickly decided he wanted to move. With the closing of the grocery, Mr. Hart saw his opportunity. In 1969, he leased the space formerly housing Ebert's grocery department. And, as you might have guessed, this was the origin of Hart's Fabric Center. More than 50 years later, Hart's Fabric is still in business and now located just across Seabright Avenue. The addition of Hart's Fabric wasn't just associated with the closing of Ebert's grocery. It meant Ebert's discontinued many of the items in their dry goods department that were related to sewing, yardage, sewing materials, needlework. This left men's and women's apparel as the remaining components of their dry goods department. Together with the garden store, these were the remaining departments that continued to serve the local community. While T.R. Ebert now entered his 90s, he continued to find ways to be useful, making wooden planters that were sold in the garden store. Alas, on December 6, 1969, time finally caught up with him, and T.R. Ebert passed away at the age of 95. In his obituary, the Santa Cruz Sentinel referred to T.R. as a pioneer of East Santa Cruz business development. But T.R. was more than just a pioneer. He was a man with a vision and the determination not to let anything stop him from achieving his goals. Another era came to an end in the late 80s with the closing of the men's apparel department in 1987, followed 2 years later by the closing of Ebert's garden store. With the passing of these departments, the sole remaining component of the Ebert's business was ladies' apparel. Suzlin and Diane Ebert headed this business, with Suzlin taking on the additional responsibilities of office manager and bookkeeper, as her Aunt Dorothy had done years earlier. As the years passed, the customer base of Ebert's women's apparel became an increasingly elderly group. There were few stores locally that specialized in clothing and fashion for elderly women, so Suzlin and Diane catered Ebert's products to this demographic. While Ebert's was no longer in its heyday, it still had an impressive building, from its Art Deco facade to its original tin ceiling. With that in mind, one day in 1992, a man entered the store and began looking around. He introduced himself to Suzlin and Diane and explained he was in the movie business. He wanted to use the interior of their building as the set for a scene of the made-for-TV movie Poisoned by Love. The sight of such stars as Harry Hamlin and Eileen Brennan was a thrill for the Eberts family and staff, and, as an added bonus, some of them even got to play extras in the film. Despite the thrill of Hollywood, Ebert's customer base and revenue continued to dwindle. Suzlin and Diane considered closing their doors. However, when they explained their plans to their customers, the question of Ebert's closing was met with a resounding no. Elderly women loved to shop there and didn't want to see it close. Suzlin and Diane were encouraged by their customers, and perhaps using some of the same tenacity and determination utilized by their grandfather, T.R., they sought a way forward for Ebert's. With that goal in mind, Suzlin and Diane decided to move Ebert's ladies' apparel across the street and a little ways down Soquel Avenue to a small storefront that had once housed the Toy Box, a hugely popular children's toy store. While they held great hope, Suzlin and Diane couldn't make lightning strike twice. Perhaps it was their new location, albeit just a stone's throw from their original site. Perhaps it was the downsized storefront with a lack of available parking. But on September 30th, 1998, after several months of slow business, Ebert's closed their doors for the last and final time. It should be noted that, while the Ebert name disappeared from the front of their building, though it remains to this day on the old hay barn in the back, the Ebert family retained ownership of the property. Their building has had numerous tenants over the years, including Harley-Davidson and Jerry's Sports. The Harley business was particularly noteworthy because of part of their agreement with the Ebert family. In order to become tenants, Harley-Davidson agreed to have the building remodeled to the same style and specifications it had when T.R. Ebert remodeled it in 1940. This was an important moment in the preservation of the structure. In 2016, the Ebert family was again looking for tenants for their building. Lillian's Italian Kitchen and their owners, the Moreno family, had a successful business in a small space just down the block on Soquel Avenue. T.R.'s grandson, Howard A. Eddy, thought Lillian's would be perfect for the Ebert space. So he approached Joe Moreno, an Eastside native himself, and floated the idea. Joe agreed. Both families took financial risk, and this time the ghost of T.R. Ebert was smiling down on them. Lillian's blossomed at its new location, becoming an Eastside landmark of its own. Of course, the restaurant adorned its walls with photos, menus, and other Ebert's memorabilia. There you have the history of Ebert's, at least to the present day. One can only wonder what the future holds for this proud and impressive building. But what about T.R. Ebert? What is his message to future generations of Santa Cruz residents and entrepreneurs?
Here's this man who came from Wisconsin out to California, and he had a vision, and people thought he was crazy to build a store out in the middle of nowhere. 6 months, you're going to be gone. But he was German stubborn, let's just say, and had this vision, and he was going to make it work. And he worked hard, built his business, and it is what it is today. The property's still there in the family name. Basically, if you have a vision and you have a desire and you have stubbornness, I guess, you can do anything. You can do anything you set your mind to.
And the legacy continues as TR's grandchildren, Diane, Richard, Howard, Suzlyn, and Carol, continue to manage their family's property. They pride themselves on choosing tenants who are not only responsible, but whose businesses are good for the local neighborhood and community. If you come down, perhaps you'll see Howard or Carol out back cleaning up the parking lot. It might not seem like a big deal to some, but it's just another way in which the Ebert and Eddy families show their pride in their family's property. But more than that, they honor the legacy of T.R. Ebert and Ebert's department store and supermarket and its many years of service to the local Santa Cruz community. Before I go, I wanted to thank the Ebert and Eddy families for sharing their memories with me. I only wish I had more time to share with you some of the amazing stories they shared with me. In that vein, I leave you with two short pieces. The first, a selection of vintage Ebert's signage created by Bob Ebert. The second, extended footage of the 1940 Ebert's remodel. I hope you enjoyed our show and that you stick around for the bonus features. Thank you for joining me.
No home, cried an orphan girl at the door of a princely hall. As she trembling stood on the polished steps and leaned on the marble wall. Her clothes were torn and her head was bare, and she tried to cover her feet with a dress that was tattered and covered with snow, yes, covered with snow and with sleet. Her dress was thin and her feet was bare, and the snow had covered her head. Oh, give me a home, she feebly cried, a home and a piece of bread. My father, alas, I never knew, tears dimmed the eyes so bright. My mother sleeps in a new-made grave, and an orphan is begging tonight. I must freeze, she cried as she sank on the steps and strove to cover her feet with a ragged garment covered with snow, yes, covered with snow and sleet. The rich man lay on his velvet couch and dreamed of his silver and gold, while the orphan girl in her bed of snow was murmuring, so cold, so cold. The night was dark and the snow fell fast as the
rich man closed his door, and his proud lips curled were torn as he said, no bread, no room for the poor. The morning dawned, but the orphan girl still lay at the rich man's door, and her soul had fled to the home above, where there's bread and there's room for the poor.
Oh, what makes your head so red? Oh, what makes your head so red? I've been working so hard in that hot sunshine. It's a wonder that I ain't dead. It's a wonder that I ain't dead. It's a wonder that I ain't dead. I've been working so hard in that hot sunshine. Wonder that I ain't dead. What number shoes do you wear? Told you last night at my room door that I wore a number 4. That I wore a number 4. That I wore a number 4. Told you last night at my room door that I wore a number 4. Gal used to walk with me. Tonight she's with some other man. Tell him that she don't like me. Tell him that she don't like me. Tell him that she don't like me. Tonight she's with some other man. Tell him that she don't like me. In that county jail ain't long, sleeping on that hardboard floor. Well, bye-bye, my baby child. Bye-bye, my baby child. I've been to the pen and I'm going back again. Bye-bye, my baby child. Back to Colorado, she's a beating old Nevada. I'm a-longing for them foothills every day. It's so soothing in the evening when the old gray wolves are grieving. Take me back to Colorado for to stay, for to stay, for to stay. Colorado, I'm busting right away. I just love the roar and rattle of the hoofs and horns of cattle. Take me back to Colorado for to stay. When them north winds get to howling, then the old coyotes are prowling, then it's me who see you sitting by the fire. My old dog won't be a growling, and you won't catch me a scowling, 'cause we both know just exactly where we are. Where we are, where we are. bet your boots we're knowing where we are. My old dog will be a scratching fleas, and I'll be toasting my old knees, sitting in my cabin by the fire. There's a gal that I'm a-lovin', talk about your turtle dovin', you can tell the world we invented that. We'll be at the squire's marrying, and we won't be a-tarrying as soon as I can find out where she's at. Where she's at, where she's at, I'll be getting up and under my old hat. I'll be jumping in the saddle and the bronco he'll skedaddle just as soon as I can find out where she's at. Take me back to Colorado, she's a beating old Nevada. I'm along for them foothills every day. It's so soothing in the evening when the old gray wolves are grieving. Take me back to Colorado for to stay, for to stay, for to stay. Colorado, I'm busting right away. With the prairie dogs a bobbing, how my heart will be a throbbing. Take me back to Colorado for to stay. It's so soothing in the evening when the old gray wolves are grieving. Take me back to Colorado for to stay.
She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain. She'll be coming round the mountain. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be driving 6 white horses when she comes. She'll be driving 6 white horses when she comes. She'll be driving 6 white horses. She'll be driving 6 white horses. She'll be driving 6 white horses when she comes. We'll all go out to meet her when she comes. And we'll all go out to meet her when she comes. And we'll all go out to meet her. We'll all go out to meet her. We'll all go out to meet her when she comes. And we'll kill the old red rooster when she comes. We'll kill the old red rooster when she comes. We'll kill the old red rooster. We'll kill the old red rooster. We'll kill the old red rooster when she comes. And we'll all have chicken and dumplings when she comes. And we'll all have chicken and dumplings when she comes. And we'll all have chicken and dumplings. We'll all have chicken and dumplings. We'll all have chicken and dumplings when she comes. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. She'll be driving 6 white horses when she comes. And we'll all go out to meet her and kill the old red rooster. We'll have chicken and dumplings when she comes.
And there you have it. Hope you enjoyed the show.
So if you have any questions, Mr. Modell is taking questions, so you can submit them in the Q&A. And I did see one come through the chat, so I'll read that one very quickly. You might want to take a look through the chat. There are people saying thank you and that sort of thing. Let's see. It says, are there any of the family members played a musical instrument in the Watsonville Adult Marching and Concert Band and or with the Santa Cruz Orchestra before the orchestra became the Santa Cruz Symphony?
Gosh, I would not know the answer to that. In all honesty, it did not come up in the course of my work. I apologize.
It says, where was the garden store located?
The garden store was originally attached to the main building where the parking lot is now, but along the edge of Seabright Avenue. Once in the 60s, and the new garden store was built, it was in the back of the parking lot. The building is still there now, and it's been added onto and is a rehabilitation service.
And then your next question says, how did you get involved with the Ebert family?
Well, that's a really good question. Some years ago, I took it upon myself to spearhead a project to build a historical marker for the Eastside Library, which was at the corner of Soquel, Water Street, and Morrissey, in that little triangle park from 1921 to 1967. In the course of that project, Howard Eddy approached me and we struck up a friendship. In the course of that, he shared with me some of the home movies that you saw today. And I was just blown away. And I knew I needed to find some way to get those out to the public because I knew everyone would appreciate it as much as me. I can mention two little pieces of information to add to the film. One being, you might have noticed Dorothy Eddy during the 1940 remodel home movie footage with a baby. That was none other than Dick Eddy, who you also heard from during our presentation, and also I believe is watching this video. So he got a little bit of a cameo there. And the other thing, which is mentioned in the video itself, but I really want to stress, most all of the music that you heard was performed by Charlie Marshall, who was also, as you saw, the performer at the 1940 remodel. So it was really neat to be able to bring his voice and his sound to you today. That meant a lot to me.
Okay, your next question says, is the garden behind the crepe place part of the Ebert garden store?
The crepe place is a separate property, but if you go back behind where Vanguard Realty and CrossFit are located, just to the west of the old barn, you will see a greenery area, and that is part of the Ebert's property. Sorry, I hope that answered the question.
All right, well, you have another question. It says, hi, Daniel, great work. I really enjoyed it. I noticed a photo that had the sign Webb's Farm. I think that was Marie Bow's grandfather who owned Webb's Cackle Farm. Have never seen that picture before. So thank you.
Yes, that is correct. Webb's Cackle Farm was located on Parkway and stayed in business until the gosh, I don't remember, maybe around the 20s. But yes, the Anstis family eventually became owners of that property, which was Marie Beau's parents.
Okay. Did the kids graduate Mission Hill Junior High School and Santa Cruz High School?
I believe so. I know they went to Santa Cruz High. It's been a while since I talked to them about that, but yeah, I believe the answer is yes.
Okay, next question. Let's see. How can I contact the Eddy family? My grandmother was an Eddy from Illinois.
Anybody who's interested in contacting the Eddys can touch base with me. As I said, my email address, eastsidehistory@gmail.com. I'm happy to be a conduit to make that happen. I had a feeling there might be some folks wanting to get in touch with them.
Okay, nice job, Dan. Very well put together. Thoroughly entertaining. Howard and Carol Eddy and the Segians. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
Segians.
The Segians. Oh, darn it.
Yes, the Segians are another longtime Santa Cruz family. Their father was a chiropractor here on the East Side for many years. I'm glad they enjoyed the show.
And then Richard enjoyed the photo of the Model T.
I knew he would. He actually played in that car as a baby once it was purchased from the Ebert family.
And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A. We have reached the end of that first round of questions, but don't be shy. Now's your chance to ask any questions you might have.
And if anybody has any memories of Ebert's, any photos, memorabilia, anything they want to share, I would be more than interested in speaking with you. You know, local history is not a one and done prospect. There are always new stories to unearth and new photos to share. And I would love to connect with anybody who's interested.
All right, your next comment. It says, I'm hoping Suslin and Diane are watching this. I went to school with Suslin and she was a great friend and neighbor. I've lost contact with her and enjoyed seeing the family photos. I'd love to get in touch with Suslin. We were in the same class at Mission Hill Elementary, Mission Hill Junior, and Santa Cruz High.
Yeah, well, and that is one of the great things about doing local histories here in Santa Cruz is that a lot of the families are still here and have been here for multiple generations. I usually don't have to go too far afield in the course of doing my work.
And actually, Mr. Modell, I have a question. How much of that corner of that property do they own still, where Lillian's is?
They still own the Lillian's property, the post office property, and the property next to it, which is the Vanguard Realty in the front and the CrossFit in the back, and all of the parking lot, the barn, by the way, for those of you who are interested, unofficial, but I believe the barn dates back to about the 1920s, so it's about 100 years old. Really neat piece. I'm very thankful that it has survived.
Great, thank you. And Gail, it looks like we have come to the end of our audience questions.
Thank you to our speaker, Daniel Modell, for an intriguing portrait of a longtime Santa Cruz family and for sharing the documentary film he created. Dan, that is truly a tour de force. This program has been recorded and the recording will be available soon on the Santa Cruz Public Library's YouTube channel. Thank you, all of you, for being with us for today's program. Please join us again in the new year on the first Tuesday of January, that's January 3rd at 1 p.m. for my annual genealogically oriented writing program. We will write about our ancestors' journeys and I'll give you some prompts to think about. This will be a Zoom presentation. Register to receive the Zoom link via the Santa Cruz Public Library's events calendar. We also hope to see you at the holiday luncheon on Thursday, December 1 at the Crow's Nest Restaurant at 11:30. Just a reminder, although today's program does not include a handout, you may access available handouts from earlier programs by visiting the Genealogy Society of Santa Cruz County website and clicking on lectures and handouts. That's over here in the lower left. The website address I've put in the chat, and to save the chat, you just click on the three little dots and click on Save Chat, and you'll have the web address. It's at https://scgensoc.org/. When you visit the Genealogy Society website, you will also find the membership application form there. If you are not already a member of the Genealogical Society of Santa Cruz County, we cordially invite you to join our society. We look forward to welcoming new members. And then Sarah will explain how to register for our next programs. To register for the programs, you just enter your first and last name and email address on the Santa Cruz Library webpage. Click the small yes box, which allows our society to send you more information about various events you might be interested in attending. And once you click the blue register button, you will receive the Zoom invitation for the next program. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. Here you can see the form. You enter your name and click the box and then click register. Blue box down at the bottom. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Mr. Modell. Bye.
Thank you.